Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our guest today is Senator Arthur Orr, Republican from Decatur. Also, the V-Team looks at the new Open Meetings Act being proposed. And rumors coming out of Lee County say that some of Mike Hubbard's Confederates are tumbling like a cat in a dryer. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt. I'm joined today by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Good morning. Glad to be here. Good morning.
Great to have Barron back. And we have a special guest, my lovely wife, Susan Britt, who is also a reporter at the State House and associate producer of the show. Welcome, Susan.
Thanks. Glad to be here on this side of the camera for once.
Well, you know, there's something that a lot of people don't know. We were told when we first started covering the State House that Susan and I were the first husband and wife reporters to ever cover the Alabama State House. A nice little honor to have.
It is.
There are probably some people that disagree that that was an honor.
It makes it a tougher team.
There's probably a lot of people that wish that there was still not a husband and wife team covering the State House.
That may be true.
I know a few of those.
Listen, big things happening around the State House this week. A lot of stuff going on. Open Meetings Act is a big deal. We want to try to bring that back. What's your thought on this, Barron?
Well, I agree they need to strengthen the Open Meetings Act. The Supreme Court gutted it in order to save a few Republican meetings here and there. I think it's time to get an actual Open Meetings Act with teeth. But an Open Meetings Act is only as good as the people are honest who are subjected to it. And I don't know that right now it's going to make much difference.
Well, and the other flip side to that, too, is who's going to enforce it?
Right.
A law is as good as it is to be enforced. And, you know, right now with the open meeting law, you know, reporters and people call and it's a little too late. You got to have somebody to enforce it. But I think it's good for them to try to get a tougher act.
I agree, and goes back to the story that we broke on Thursday of this week, where there's an open meetings violation, it looks like maybe in the RSA meeting dealing with the Bronner event. So, you know, where does it stop?
Yeah, I mean, they clearly had serial meetings, but there's probably no law to prevent that. It's interesting. Do they really want this, or is this just more posturing? Who knows?
Well, I think in theory, you want good, honest, open, transparent government. Those are some of the most focused, tested words in all of politics.
Yeah, of course.
But, you know, and so it's good to run around and say, we passed an Open Meetings Act that's even stronger than the court wanted to have. But again, if you've got dishonest people subject to the Open Meetings Act, they just lie about it.
Yeah.
And then it has no teeth.
Right, and you take, for an example, what you're talking about, RSA, then once it's done, then the retribution for those individuals that were harmed, then it's just too late.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of things like that going on. Of course, we're back to Lee County this week. We hear the grand jury's been impaneled again. Rufus has been down there in disguise with his little camera and all. He's checking it out for us. But in all seriousness, one of the things that we've heard coming out of the grand jury in Lee County is that someone's flipped. Someone close to Mike Hubbard has flipped and is talking. Anything else y'all are hearing out of there?
Well, I don't know that anybody wants to go out and name the name of the person everybody's talking about flipping. I would say this. I think it's remarkable that it's been this long that a grand jury that we know has been impaneled in Lee County for 6 months. There were rumors of other grand juries around the state. This long for a rumor to break that somebody's flipped. This idea that these guys could all lock arms, be quiet, not say anything, and somehow survive this thing is ludicrous. You know, everybody uses the Milton McGregor trial as sort of a, well, if they just are quiet and hold tight, you can get through this. People forget there were about 4 or 5 convictions in the Milton McGregor trial.
Absolutely.
Well, also, the people that we're talking about here, and I'm talking over a broad spectrum of people, have small children.
Yep.
They're
Right.
just starting their families. It's not, I mean, Milton's children were grown and out of the house. We've got small children involved here, so somebody at some point is going to have to break.
Well, that.
Go ahead.
Well, what I was, you take this whole case. So many of these legislators that were elected 3.5 years ago, all of them, most of them are very young and have small children, young families, lawyers practicing, all that sort of thing. Same thing. The guys that are really close to Mike and are in the, the chosen ones, fairly young guys, have been intimately involved in Republican politics, and they've got young children. And I imagine if I was their wife, I'd say, hey, you're going to fold, or you're going to go to jail and leave me without with raising children.
And they're fairly young in their careers as well. I mean, you lock arms now, you're young in your career, you have no chance, you're done.
Well, it's the beauty of the Alabama Grand Jury Secrecy Act, which is you can go in there and flip, you can turn state's evidence, you can agree to be the best witness ever, and you can walk out, give your buddy a wink and a nod and say, I'm all over it, don't worry, I got you covered, we're good to go. And you could go on and still make money, they can refer you business, everything could be gravy, and you are just digging a knife in their back the whole time, and they don't have a clue, because nobody in that room's allowed to talk.
Sounds like good Alabama politics, doesn't it?
Well, people are waiting, that's all I know. That's all
no
people
kidding. We're
are
all
buzzing
waiting.
about.
One of the other things that's come up this week, Senator Marsh presented a bill, stop the revolving door, keep legislators from becoming lobbyists. Of course, in the course of one walk down the Senate hall, I ran into two of our recently new lobbyists.
Former House members.
Former House members.
Former Republican House members. Former chairmen.
Jay Love, ran into him. Hey, Jay, how you doing? And ran into Mr. Barton, and it was good to see him, but really, how's that law going to work?
Well, the law as it stands now, if you're a former House member, you can lobby in the Senate. If you're a former Senate member, you can lobby in the House. What Marsh's bill would do is say that you can't lobby in either House for 2 years. The existing law now is 1 year. However, Hank Sanders has taken it up a step with adding an amendment to that would really tighten it on all public officials, not just legislatures. I think the governor would be, and family members would be banned for 4 years. Any other public official, including agency members, would also be banned. Anyone who's doing trade that is in charge of any kind of purchasing or selling of goods, all of those things could not just be given to a former official. It has to go through the bid process.
Well,
and this is from Hank Sanders, a Democrat.
Right, but he's right, because now that, years ago under the ethics law, if you did regulatory or executive branch lobbying, you didn't have to report that client. Okay. Now, if you do regulatory and executive branch lobbying, you do report that client. So that revolving door should expand into that world as well. And I think you're right. It's legislators, but if you're elected statewide official, I think it should apply to you as well.
Also, when talking about the sale of goods and such, if you do get one of those contracts, you have to report every brother, sister, aunt, uncle, anybody who's involved with the legislature or any public official for 10 years. I mean, it's pretty tight. What's
the chances of this Hank Sanders amendment making it?
Well, I don't always agree with Hank Sanders. He and I are on opposite sides of the aisle, and we had a discussion in the office when this came up, and it was awkward that we all agreed with Hank Sanders. I think it has no chance of passing.
I'm going to have to cut you off here. Coming up next, our guest is Senator Arthur Orr from Decatur. You're watching The V. Stay put. We'll be right back.
Here's what customers are saying about WeatherGuard Lifetime Metal Roofing.
The product is something with no maintenance and that I never have to worry about the rest of my life.
The price was very reasonable, we thought, and we were well satisfied with the installation.
Hello, I'm Robert Wells, president of WeatherGuard. We are a family-owned business and we will back our lifetime warranty for generations to come.
Come by our showroom on Alton Road in Birmingham. WeatherGuard Lifetime Metal Roofing, 533-7322.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
In 1977, an 8-year-old boy picked up the game of golf from his father. The odds of that same boy then making it to the US and European pro golf tours, 1 in 7 million. The odds of the Big Easy winning the US Open twice, 1 in 1.2 billion. The odds of him having a child diagnosed with autism, 1 in 88. Ernie Els encourages you to learn the signs of autism.
Welcome back to the Voice of Alabama Politics. Our guest today is Republican Senator Arthur Orr from Decatur. Senator Orr, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bill. Good to be with you.
I know you're very busy. You've got a lot of things on your plate this session. One of the things that you proposed is a method by which Alabama, the state, would prepare for a U.S. constitutional convention. Can you explain why you've proposed that and what it means?
Working with Senator Tripp Pittman out of Baldwin County, we have 2 bills that we have filed to prepare the way for Alabama in the event an Article 5 constitutional convention is called to consider amendments from the states. These 2 bills basically give the criteria for delegates, how they would be selected, and then to allay some concerns, what would happen if delegates kind of operated outside their mandate from the state? In other words, if they went rogue, how they would be called back and how their authority to act on behalf of the state of Alabama would be suspended and revoked. And so to put aside any concerns about a runaway convention, we wanted to do this for Alabama. Other states are doing it. The state of Indiana did it last year. And there's a real movement to consider an Article 5 constitutional convention that's gaining force around the country. So we need Alabama to be prepared and know how we will send our delegates and choose our delegates if there is a convention.
Would this be a narrow convention or would it be broad?
With all the people I've discussed it with, it would be very narrow. The thinking right now is to just take up one amendment at a time. I think the one that is at the top of the list is a balanced budget amendment. Incidentally, the legislature in 2011 passed a joint resolution, which I sponsored with other senators, that did call for an Article 5 constitutional convention limited to a balanced budget amendment. And if it strayed, the convention strayed, that authority would be revoked. And so in other words, if they started considering other amendments, Alabama would not participate and our delegates would be under that rule if they went to that convention.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask, the people of Alabama, many of them want to see a redo of our 1901 convention, Constitution, yet we're not willing to have a constitutional convention. We're writing it one bill at a time. Can you assure our voters or the voters of Alabama that y'all will take as much care with this one as you have with the 1901?
Well, when you look at our federal budget deficit, $17 trillion plus, and then once you include the entitlements, we're up to $86 trillion as far as what we've promised, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, those types of entitlement programs. So trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, and I think that the budget deficits are a concern. Regarding our 1901 Constitution, as you know, the people passed back in 2012 several amendments to clean a lot of that up. We have, I think, 4 bills that will be coming through the legislative process that will clean up or revise other areas of our state constitution. Former Governor Albert Brewer has been the chairman of that committee, and they've done a lot of work, and the legislature will be considering that as we look to downsize our Constitution and make some necessary changes.
Well, you've had a very interesting career that led you to the legislative branch of government. You've been inventive. You've done lots of things like that. One of the bills you have this time is sponsoring a bill for crowdfunding. A lot of people have no idea what that is. Could you share with us a little bit about that?
Well, that's another vehicle for small businesses to raise capital. One of the struggles they have is that when they run out of personal money to invest or for close friends and family, they need another level of financing. So This bill will allow them to sell shares in their companies to others within the state without having to deal with all the Securities and Exchange Commission rules and regulations that are out there. Work very closely with our Securities Commissioner, Joe Borg, who has been instrumental in this bill, and we've prepared a good bill that's attracted a lot of attention. Had an interview with the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and other out-of-state publications regarding this, and it's gaining traction. We had it on the calendar this week, ran into a little difficulties in bills a little bit above that, but I would think the Senate will take it up in the next week or so.
This would be really good for small businesses, startup, tech companies, that type of thing. Is that correct?
It's for $1 million or less. Usually when you get north of $1 million, $2, $3, $5 million, you get into the private placements. That can be expensive as well, but it's a low-cost means, and will still be regulated by our state Securities Commission, which does an excellent job, and it's to assure that fraudsters or people that want to bilk people out of their money are held accountable, and that there are some limitations there.
You have a tremendous amount of responsibility over the general fund budget. You are the chair of that budget. We've heard reports that it's going to be an ugly budget. Is it going to be ugly, and if so, how ugly?
Well, if you start with Governor Bentley's recommended budget, he was able to find various sources of funds throughout state government where they had built up over time. One, for example, was our escrow taxes for businesses, where we had a business privilege tax that we had to refund a lot of out-of-state businesses due to litigation. Well, those claims have started to dissipate, and they're very few now. So we have a new revenue stream there, about $60 million additional dollars. There were some other untapped funds that we had access to that the governor is using in his budget proposal. So the short answer is, it's not as bad as a lot had feared.
Great.
Level funding for most, but we've got some work to do in some areas, such as corrections, which had a very substantial ruling by the Justice Department as far as Tutwiler Prison. So working with our DOC commissioner and others to give them the resources they need to operate our correction system is very important.
But you feel optimistic?
Considering where we were several months ago, yes, I do.
You're running for re-election. Your campaign coffers are looking good. How do you feel about your re-election prospects?
Well, you know, I just continue to work hard and leave the rest up to the good Lord.
We want to thank you for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with our viewers. You're watching The V. We'll be right back with the V team for some more analysis. Stay tuned.
Save on energy costs and protect your home with a WeatherGuard Lifetime Metal Roof. WeatherGuard metal roofs are produced by the best manufacturers and installed by our certified experts. WeatherGuard is family-owned and believes in honesty, integrity, and professionalism. Come by and visit our 2,000 square foot showroom on Alton Road in Birmingham. Be sure to ask about the Energy Star tax credit. WeatherGuard Lifetime Metal Roofing, 533-7322. WeatherGuardMetalRoofs.com.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Arthur Orr had some interesting things to say. I think one of the most interesting was this Article 5 Constitutional Convention that they're talking about. Claire, what's your thoughts on that?
This is the one that he and Senator Pittman have both introduced,
Right.
and they've traveled to D.C. and have met with a lot of the congressional leaders in the 34 other states as well. I think it's very honorable. I think it's a great idea. I don't really foresee it coming to fruition. I mean, you've got to get all these states together, Congress has got to appoint this. And if we can't do an Alabama Constitutional Convention, I would think it might be somewhat difficult to do one on a national level. But I think it's a great, worthy try.
Well, we've had more than 200 years of American history, and it hadn't happened yet, an Article 5 convention. Most people don't even know it exists. We generally speak in red states and blue states. There are about 30 red states, 20 blue states. Which 6 blue states are going to get on board to pass a wave of conservative constitutional amendments? It's not going to happen.
One of the things that is sweeping the country are these laws that protect health care providers from doing anything that's against their conscience that might be morally wrong. Of course, Becky Nordgren on the State House floor kept calling them consciousness acts, as if all of a sudden we were going to legislate a smarter state. But, I mean, I wish she could do that, but I don't think that's going to happen. What's your thoughts on this, though, Barron? It's a very serious issue, isn't it?
It is. You don't find too many people more pro-life than me. I'm a big, big fan of this bill. 48 other states have some sort of conscience clause protection. It's a crying shame to me in Alabama we act like we're common sense conservative and we dare defend our rights, yet somehow we're one of the last 2 remaining states without some sort of conscience clause protection. It's outrageous. It's long overdue, and I'm as in favor of it as you could possibly be.
And it is, you know, it's passed the House. It'll be transferred to the Senate last night or this morning. So it's on a fast track because this is just the 4th legislative day in the Alabama general session.
And this doesn't exclude men. This under the sterilization includes things like vasectomies and so forth. So this is not just a woman's issue.
Well, it's been controversial. There are people that are against it. Our own Jonathan Barbee's at the Capitol today with someone who has an objection to this act. Jonathan?
Thanks, Bill. We're out here with Mr. Ben Cooper from Equality Alabama today, and we're talking about House Bill 31, which was presented by Representative Becky Nordgren, and that is the Health Care Rights of Conscience Act, which will prevent healthcare professionals who have a moral implication with performing abortions, vasectomy, sterilizations, stem cell research, and cloning. It will allow them to opt out of doing those things if this is passed. Ben, tell us about Equality Alabama and why you're taking a stance against this bill.
Equality Alabama is an organization that advances and works to advance equality for LGBT Alabamians where they live, work, learn, and play in the state. This bill in particular, HB 31, our particular opposition relates directly to the objection that a medical provider may make when treating LGBT individuals. The other issue that we've been on record for is related to the stem cell research, whereas that affects those individuals who are in the LGBT community living with or have been diagnosed as HIV positive and AIDS.
So you're afraid that if this bill were to pass, it could have a direct effect on your community and others?
Absolutely, it would have a direct effect on those individuals to receive health care, equal health care. Especially our concern includes those individuals who live in rural communities where they may be refused health care and not have available providers within the immediate area.
Well, Ben, thank you for coming out today, and we're going to keep an eye on this bill and see how it goes. It's now in the Senate, and they're taking a look at it. And back to you, Bill.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, this is going to be an interesting discussion. I think it's going to pass right through the Senate. It'll be signed by the governor.
As it should.
A bill I think is going to have a hard time making it. It may make it, but it's an odd bill. Barry Moore has a bill to make Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act null and void. How does that work out, Barron?
It doesn't. I mean, it's absurd. It's among the stupidest legislation that's been proposed since the Republicans have taken over. It's like saying we're going to strike down portions of the United States Constitution here in Alabama. We're going to do away with free speech because we don't like it anymore. I mean, there's a supremacy clause that says the federal government can pass laws and you've got to deal with it. You know, we tried secession, that didn't work. You know, if you want to beat this thing back, go to the polls, win federal elections, win the presidency, and repeal this thing. You can't do it the way Barry Moore wants to do it. This is absolute idiocy at its finest.
Well, you know what? It's an election year. He's grandstanding. I hear he's got an opponent or may have an opponent. He's grandstanding. I mean, it really is a crazy idea. I mean, the Congress. I mean, there's grassroots groups, there's all type of providers, everybody trying to beat back certain segments of Obamacare, but you've got to do it at the federal level. You can't say, we're just pulling out here now.
That's absolutely absurd.
Well, it's
kind of embarrassing.
It embarrasses us as a state.
Yeah,
It does.
I mean, he should have talked to some of his legal colleagues in the Alabama House of Representatives and run this by them before he embarrassed himself. And then I believe, I mean, I have to say this, I guess last week when it came about, and it was the front and center of Yellowhammer, that was their first article.
Yeah, I noticed they didn't put in the article that they share houses and businesses together, Cliff Sims and Barry Moore. This whole thing is absurd, it's embarrassing, and Barry Moore should withdraw this bill and apologize to us for subjecting us to it.
Do you have a strong opinion about this?
I do. This kind of stuff is absurd. The legislation is serious business. This is very serious business. You get 30 days to do your thing each year. Wasting time on this is ridiculous.
Absolutely.
I mean, Becky Norton's bill is something that needs to be done in Alabama, okay? We've all agreed upon that. This is nothing but grandstanding and makes us as a state look ignorant.
One other thing we got to look at before we run out of time is the Death Penalty Act. They want to put in an express lane to get as many people off death row as possible. Susan, what's your take on this?
Well, it got pretty favorable in the public hearing that they had on Wednesday, I believe it was. But it's not just this bill. There are other bills that are attached to this as well that include wiretapping, that include a defense attorney not being able to contact a family member of a victim, even though, as Chris England said during the committee meeting, you know, what if the family member is actually a witness? And also, any former jurors, ex-defense attorneys, are not able to try to go and see if they can find some way to amend or appeal a previous case based on that. So this is a package that goes along with it.
We got about a minute left. What are your thoughts on the death penalty, Claire?
Well, I mean, I've worked for 2 attorney generals. I passed a lot of death penalty appeal bills, particularly with Jeff Sessions and Bill Pryor both. I mean, Hank Sanders has got probably 3 or 4 of his own that I've seen that he's filed. He's adamantly opposed to the death penalty. I mean, I am a proponent of the death penalty, and, you know, I believe under Sessions we took out one of the other appeals under the Court of Criminal Appeals. You know, we've got, as we talked about on this show probably a month ago, what are the 2 boiling pots in the state of Alabama? It's Medicaid and corrections.
Right.
We do not have enough beds and enough prisons in this state to fulfill and keep all these people. And another little good point here. We spend more on prisoners at Holman Prison and Atmore per year than we do on children K through 12 in education. That's absurd.
We're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching The V. We're on ABC 3340 in Birmingham and ABC 32 in Montgomery. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.